Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. My name is Jeff Weidner. I'm the VP of Innovation here at Monster. Today I'm joined by Steve Noel, and Steve is the VP of Audience at Monster, and today we're going to be talking about Google for Jobs. Before we get started, Steve, can you tell me, give me like 30 seconds to a minute, introduce yourself?
Absolutely, Jeff. I'm the Vice President of Audience at Monster, which what that means is that I'm responsible for driving more value in terms of seekers, submitting resumes, or increasing the number of applications all the way through to our clients. I joined here about 4 months ago, and I'm excited about the progress we've made and the opportunities in front of us. In particular, I'm focused on optimizing Monster and our customers in organic search, as well as changing the way we buy ads through to deliver more value all the way through to our customers. I've been in the space for almost 20 years and feel I have a lot to bring to the table, as well as the team that we're bringing in to help do this. And I'm excited about our opportunity to really build upon the value we're delivering to our customers and start providing them more insights into how they can help themselves.
Great. Steve, before we get into real deep here, let's just start by explaining what Google for Jobs is.
Yeah, Google for Jobs was created just so that everyone's on the same page and launched in June. And what that means is the starting point for Google for Jobs was in the United States when a user in the Google search types in various searches like IT jobs or IT jobs in San Francisco. At the top of the search results, there will be a presentation of typically a 3-pack of jobs within the Google interface. That is provided by Google for Jobs. The user, if they click on one of those jobs or clicks on View Additional Jobs, will be transferred into the full Google for Jobs interface. That interface allows them to do further searches and see a complete set of jobs responsive to their query. That does not replace all jobs within the Google interface. So below the Google for Jobs 3-pack on the search results, there are going to be the same ads and the same results that you would have seen prior to the launch of Google for Jobs. It is, however, the first time Google has taken on the second and third page of that search within the job-seeking environment. And so it's a significant step, and a lot of people are using it, and a lot of our competitors and Monster itself are partnering with Google to make sure it has appropriate information within that index.
So really all that they did was create a custom search engine result page. So similar, if you were to search for directions to a restaurant, they would show a map right at the top. If you're searching for a jobs, it's going to recognize that on the Google engine and give you a couple of jobs right at the top, right?
Absolutely. One other thing I would add is that's on the user side. On the back end, they are creating a separate index, which has a separate set of schema that will talk about it and the way that you want to communicate with it. And so they do now have a job index that's separate from the standard Google index, and something that we and all of our partners want to be part of.
So as an SEO expert, right, Steve, you know there's lots of things that Google or you can do to either get punished by Google or praised by Google to get higher search engine results, right? People are always going to try and manipulate these search engine results. So let's spend a few minutes and discuss some of the best things you can do to increase your search engine results ranking, and then we'll go into some of the worst things. So just give me 3 or 4 of the best things you can do as a corporation or staffing firm trying to post your jobs and get a higher ranking. What would you do first?
So the very first thing I would do, and that's something that Monster is doing, is you have to start tracking your results and understanding what's happening in the marketplace. Listen to your advisors, look at the numbers, whether it's your numbers from Monster or your numbers directly to yourself, to understand how you are currently ranking and what traffic you are getting from Google for Jobs. It's very important to track that and understand where you're at. But as you look at purely Google for Jobs, the number one thing that this is about is providing relevant information about the jobs you have to Google. You want to make sure you give them as much information as you can, and then secondly, you want to provide it in the right format for them to receive it. What they've told you and everybody else is they want it provided in schema, which is actually a detailed way to present and format your text within the web environment and there's definitions out there, but that's the way you want to present it. That's the way that Google is going to ingest that data and present it. So if it is actually, if your data and your job information is simply presented on the web in your standard format, Google may or may not take that information and utilize it for your search. So you do have to provide it in the right format. Then the third thing you really need to do is you need to continue to evolve your basic site experience and your mobile experience. As part of showing up and converting people within Google for Jobs, the same things that work outside of it will work there. You need to have a website that works for a mobile user because the majority of the people are using that. And that's also one of the key factors in how Google ultimately will be ranking your job next to other jobs. And then finally, I think you need to pay attention to where Google's going, and you need to get ahead of that and make sure you have that information in front of them. One of the clearest examples that they've given us as far as where they're going is they want to include jobs in not just Google for Jobs, but they want to use it in other properties like maps.google, or as you go further in some of their traffic applications. As a result, it's very important to Google to have actually the street address or the latitude and longitude of the job. That enables them to include it in multiple properties, as well as have other search features within Google like commute time. So anyone that is providing that type of information in the right format will be advantaged now, but will also be advantaged in the future as Google starts to expand Google for Jobs beyond the main Google search results. So those are the few of the items that I would focus on taking care of right away if you want to expose yourself farther on Google for Jobs.
So let me just summarize that. First, track your results. You should know what traffic you're getting, where you're getting it from, who's sending it to you, so you can have some benchmark comparisons, right? But kind of before and after you make any changes. Next is give Google the information that they're looking for and give it to them in the correct format using their schema. And I'll put some links down to their schema at the bottom, right below this video. The next thing you should be doing is making sure that your site is evolving, their site user experience, and making sure that you have a high conversion, both on the desktop and for mobile. Then we should be looking at where Google is going, maps, traffic, commute time. This will help with if you put a street address or a latitude, longitude, not just specifically a city and state. Summarize that pretty good? All right, perfect. So tell me some of the worst things a company could do to try and manipulate or influence their search engine result rankings.
So the first thing is essentially don't go for the short-term win or quote-unquote gaming Google. We have seen this for a long time throughout search engine optimizations where you may get a quick win, but ultimately you will be penalized and it can have a very long-term impact on your relationship with Google and the exposure of your jobs within Google. Some examples of doing that would be providing information that's not useful in the way that they want to use it. So for example, if you provide latitude and longitude that's not accurate to your street address, you're effectively confusing Google. They may put it in there, but they would be sending someone to the wrong address or giving a commute time to somewhere that's not actually where the job is located. That ultimately is a disservice to the users, and therefore Google will punish that behavior. In the short term, sometimes that type of gaming will work. In the long term, it will not. Other examples of gaming will be providing information or supplementing information that is not particularly useful. So salary information that's too broad of range to be useful may in the short term get picked up by Google as salary, but in the long term will be punished. Second thing that I would say is understand your relationship with Google. This is a fantastic opportunity to drive more traffic. Don't confuse that with Google being your friend or even your partner. You want to manage it accordingly. You need to provide the information that you want to provide to them to get access, but realize once you provide that information, it's out there. It's on the web, and they're going to do with it what they want to do and make it for their best interest and Google's best interest. So be careful as you walk through this to understand where you play, the nature of the opportunity, and what information and what level of relationship you want to have with Google and is acceptable. And then Finally, I would say probably well, two things. The most important thing is I would say do not stay away from Google for Jobs. Sometimes in this space and other spaces, people will say, this is a disruptive influence. I'm going to stay away and I'm going to wait and see what happens. In this environment, that's a very dangerous game to play because there are advantages from the optimization techniques you learn, advantages from being one of the first movers in the space that you don't want to be the person that bypassed this opportunity and 2 years down the road when other people have leveraged it to full benefit, you're finally getting in the mix and learning from behind. And then lastly, I think it is important to think about whether Google for Jobs is everything. When something disruptive comes in, people automatically think Google is going to take over, or that's what marketing in the future is going to be with regard to jobs. That is one element of the way we all need to market our jobs and get job seekers access to our jobs. It is not the end-all be-all, whether it's Facebook, whether it's job boards, whether it's other networks and other opportunities, there will always be additional ways. And I encourage everybody to not only optimize themselves within Google for Jobs, but make sure they diversify their marketing to make sure job seekers have access well beyond that. And you, as a job company, you as an employer, Monster as a job board is not over-reliant on Google or Google for Jobs.
Those are great things. So let me summarize the worst things you can do is, A, don't try and game Google, such as providing inaccurate information. Giving a 7-Eleven or a street corner address is not going to get you accurate information as far as your location. It should be a full street address as well as a city and state zip code, etc. Or something like a salary range between $1 and $1 million. That's probably going to, it'll get you listed, increase your schema, but in the long run, they're going to narrow it down and they're going to have enough information to say, okay, this position should really be between $30,000 and $50,000, something like that. And if you're outside of that range significantly, you'll probably get penalized in the future. The next one is make sure you have a relationship with them so you can drive traffic. Just be careful of what information you are providing, and then don't be afraid to dive into the deep end on this stuff. Learn as much as you can through this optimization process, and then make sure that it's not your only option and you're diversifying your portfolio, if you will, of advertising venues. Is that correct? Yeah, took good notes. So are there any warnings or caveats to this advice that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I think the main kind of caveat I would add to this is that this started in June. It's evolving. I see this for Google as a 1 to 2 year process. There's other examples out there with Google Local, with Google Shopping that have been taken on a very similar trajectory. What that means and what that means for everybody here is that what's happening today may not make sense for tomorrow, and it may change and it may evolve. The tactics may evolve. Google's search algorithm may evolve, and so you have to be careful about assuming that someone that's winning today, whether it's yourself or others, will win with the same techniques going forward and continue to evolve and change and keep and monitor those. I think one great example of that is when Google first launched Google for Jobs, there was a deduping process, meaning 18 people would submit effectively the same job description, and Google would choose one to show in any search result, right? That meant that a huge part of optimization within Google for Jobs was making sure your job was the one that was being deduped or being shown on Google for Jobs. That changed in the last week here in November, where now Google for Jobs is actually showing the one job, but is listing off all of the people who submitted that job, as many as 8 or 10 people, and allowing people to choose who they want to interact with in order to submit that job. That completely changes the way you're optimizing your website, the performance, and the things that you actually have to address in order to capture that user all the way through the system. So for example, whereas before it was Google making that choice, now it's the user. And we know that the job seeker may recognize a brand and have a brand affiliation. They may have a prior experience, like let's say they submitted a resume to Monster. They may be comfortable using Monster, therefore they'll select Monster even if there's 10 other opportunities. And so there's a different process in order to optimize as it changes, and that's going to continue to happen. That's one example that happened within the first 6 months. I foresee many others as we look forward over the next couple of years.
So basically, the playing field and the rules of the game are changing literally every day, right? So what may work today may not work tomorrow. But let me ask you real quick. So you were saying that they're not taking out those duplicate listings. This would affect staffing organizations, things like that. So is Google automatically giving preferential treatment to postings that are coming from a client ATS directly or from their client website? Or are they just saying, okay, whoever matches the schema preferences better, or whoever has the best schema?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't want to. I'll answer with what I know and what Google said is ultimately they want to get to the source of the job and provide the best source for the job, which ultimately would be the original source. That being said, is they also want to provide the most complete information to the job seeker in order to make the right choice and be able to search effectively across the jobs. And so at this point, they are showing and choosing the jobs that provide the most information to the user in order to provide the right choice, and that's typically in the form of the most schema, and also allow them to show up in the most search queries. So for example is, you may have the right job or be the original source of job, but if you're not, let's say, putting in even a city and a state, you're not going to be able to show up or useful to Google in most of the searches. And therefore, they're going to be showing and prioritizing those that have provided the right information, whether that's industry, whether that's street address, whether that's salary, because they want to be most responsive to users. So at the end of the day, while they do want to reach to the ultimate source, whether that's a staffing company or the employer, I think for the foreseeable future, they will be prioritizing those that are providing the best information in the right format to Google, because that enables them to service their users better, but by providing a better search.
And I assume that Monster is taking very drastic steps to make sure that we're ensuring that anybody that posts their jobs on our site, they are matching the schema to Google for Jobs so that we can get indexed properly and things of that nature. Have we done any changes for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are taking on that project as a priority and on a couple of different fronts. The first one is we look at every job posting that comes through to make sure the schema is optimized as much as it can be. And so we're actually even pulling from other parts of the job description to make sure that we fill it out such that even though the employer may not have filled it out correctly, we have that information and we want to get it to the right place for Google. We also are redoing all of what we call our job ingestion sources. So when you enter the jobs, we want to make sure you have full information as to the impact of the choices you're making. An example of that that's obvious is industry. Industry is something that a lot of people don't add. It does make a difference in Google for Jobs because they want the most complete information. So as you start entering going forward on Monster, you have a choice to enter industry. We're going to start suggesting to you that you should enter industry if you want to show up better on Google for Jobs. We'll also work on the back end to supplement that information provided that even if you didn't provide it there, if you've provided it elsewhere to Monster, we'll add that as well. And those are some of the techniques we're using. It is a priority because we believe strongly that we want to make sure that our partners, the employers and the staffing companies, are able to put their best foot forward and show up on Google for Jobs and take advantage of the opportunity in front of them. And we believe we have a unique place given the comprehensive view that we have across all employers and as a partner of Google to help them do that.
Steve, this is all great information. I'm sure that everybody that's watching certainly appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time to share your knowledge about Google for Jobs and really how to optimize your postings properly, making sure you're not getting the famous Google slap, right? So really appreciate everything. Guys, I'm going to put some links down below on this landing page that you're seeing this video on to some relevant resources like the schema and things like that. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'll also put like a little thought box and things like that. So thanks everybody. Appreciate your time. Make it a great day.